The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. Working with award-winning professors, Cronkite students learn news reporting, social media, shooting and editing videos, and producing content for communications industries. Cronkite's 15 professional programs give students the opportunity to cover critical issues throughout the U.S. and beyond. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Tholahungva. An Indigenous person could be the city of Seattle's next mayor. Colleen Echohawk, who is Pawnee, and Casey Sixkiller, who is Cherokee, are two of 15 candidates running for the office. Echohawk is the executive director of the Chief Seattle Club, which serves homeless Native people, and Sixkiller is the city's deputy mayor. Political observers say they are the best hope for change in a city with a large homeless population and low public trust for law enforcement. Echohawk guided the building of affordable housing and started an urban farm where homeless natives grow traditional foods that are served at the club.
In the past 2 years, we've housed over 681 people. We're building over $180 million of affordable housing, almost over 400 units. We're building a longhouse. We have been very successful in the work, and that kind of success is what I want to bring to the mayor's office.
If elected, Sixkiller says he plans to add 3,000 new permanent places for people experiencing homelessness to call home.
The thing that we've got to do is we've got to invest in the things we know work, and that's actually creating safe spaces for folks to come inside, creating places for people who are in shelter to transition to, so they don't call it shelter their home, their forever home. I have a plan for how we triple the production of that permanent housing in the first few years when I'm in office.
The primary election is August 3rd, with the top two vote getters advancing to the November 2nd general election. Mary Simon is now officially Canada's 30th Governor General and the first Indigenous person to hold the title. Simon says she promises to meet with Canadians all across the country to learn what can be done to make their lives better. During her installment, a First Nations drumming circle greeted her as she arrived at the Senate for the ceremony. Simon's appointment comes amid a national reckoning with the country's historical mistreatment of Indigenous peoples. The new Governor General addressed the discoveries of unmarked graves at the sites of former residential schools.
The discoveries of unmarked graves on the grounds of residential schools in recent weeks has horrified me, along with all Canadians.
The ceremony was broadcast by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in Simon's native language. In California, water protectors are teaching the youth about Yurok traditions and the culture of canoeing. This is all a part of the Save California Salmon project. The group is dedicated to restoring and protecting California salmon and rivers for future generations. The workshops was held on the Klamath River, where Hoopa Valley and North Coast tribal youth attended. They learned about the Klamath Dam removal process and how they can use their voices to protect the river. The water protectors are encouraging them to engage in public processes related to the Klamath River, including the dam removal hearings that are happening this week. Lawmakers are proposing a $6.7 billion plan to bring clean drinking water to Indian Country. AZ Central reports 2 Democratic senators are introducing the bill that would bring clean drinking water to communities that have been living with scarcity and toxic contamination for generations. Hopi Tribal Chairman Timothy Navanyoma says the water infrastructure issue is an imbalance in equity. On the Hopi Reservation in northern Arizona, many communities have tap water contaminated with toxic arsenic. Researchers with U.S. Water Alliance and Dig Deep found Native American households are 19 times more likely to lack complete plumbing. The Hopi, Navajo, and Apache survive in homes without running water, driving to communal wells to fill tanks for bathing and cooking. To date, this is the largest amount of money targeted for tribal clean water infrastructure. Native-owned and organically grown, that's the motto of a new tequila company hoping to do business with tribally owned casinos. Mark Trehunt gives us a taste of native spirits.
Boy, that is a palate cleaner. When Rudy Rojas recently entered the market of creating and selling alcohol products, he knew there were only a few Native people in Southern California who already were doing so. The Rincon Band's Reservation Brewery, which sells craft beer, and Quito Wines. Rojas wanted to dip into a market selling premium tequila, so he founded Native Spirits LLC less than 2 years ago, after many years of running a successful clothing brand.
Grown my clothing line to be a national brand in Indian country, I knew that anything I created was representing all of us. So I just didn't pump stuff out there to produce it, make a buck.
The company was in Las Vegas last week at the National Indian Gaming Association conference in hopes of partnering with casinos. The idea is that casinos could take the brand and put their own label on it as a marketing strategy.
It's all about sales, it's all about branding, but it's all about providing a great quality product.
The tequila is crafted at an award-winning distillery in Jalisco, Mexico, and currently features 3 different types of tequilas that are 100% organic. One of the casinos that serves his brand is Viejas Casino and Resort in Southern California. In Las Vegas, Mark Trahant, Indian Country Today.
And those are the headlines from Indian Country Today. I'm Patty Tawahungva. What's it like for tribal leaders to travel after being grounded during the pandemic?
We'll talk to the chief of the Muscogee Nation about that and other major events that took place while the pandemic raged. We'll be right back. I'm Mark Trahant. We're here in Las Vegas at the National Indian Gaming Association trade show, which is a remarkable thing. There's some 6,000 people here, and we have 2 very important guests. We'll start with the chief.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Glad and honored to be here.
Chief David Hill.
Sango, Jonadev Chaudhuri. I'm honored to serve as ambassador in the Muscogee Nation. And Mido for having us here. It's an honor to join you, and thank you for all the good work you do at ICT.
It's David Hill, Geogifkados. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. My name is David Hill, Principal Chief of the Muscogee Creek Nation.
Thank you so much for both of you being here. I want to start with kind of a big picture. This is a convention that's really remarkable, not because of ordinary stuff, but because this is the time for people to come back together in a safe and thoughtful way. Tell me about your impressions of this week so far. Start with the chief.
It's been a busy week. I sat on a panel this morning to discuss how we operated during the pandemic. So I relayed a message on my first day in office, with the pandemic, with the Supreme Court ruling and with the CARES funding. It was a busy year last year.
Well, let's start by talking about that decision. So much of this has been other tribes commenting on something that really was a Muscogee situation. And for all of the challenges, this is one you have to deal with.
Definitely. Even though it was a big win for Muscogee Creek Nation, but it was also a big win for all indigenous tribes. You talk to the state, the sky's not falling. That was our motto since then. And it's the sky's not falling. It's an opportunity to work to have that government-to-government relationship with the state of Oklahoma on how we can operate, do better things, and progress for the state and the tribe.
Thankful for all the allies who have rallied to that point, although there have been continued efforts of folks to push the chaos narrative. We've always been clear that historic decision brought clarity, and we're using that clarity to build a better future together.
It's interesting, Ambassador, that actually is a common narrative in the history of Indian affairs, because you look at, NIGA and the whole expansion of gaming, and Nevada and New Jersey fought it tooth and nail, said it's going to ruin everything. And what it's done is grow the pot, and everybody has come out ahead. Same in Oklahoma with law enforcement. There's going to be better law enforcement in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, despite some talking heads pushing the chaos narratives, and gaming is a perfect example, the people who engage with tribal nations on a daily basis understand the benefits for everyone living within Indian country, be those benefits jobs, or downstream economic development or roads or hospitals. And Chief Hill has done an incredible job at looking to the future and trying to develop a master plan that benefits everybody in our borders.
John is correct. I mean, this is an opportunity. And that's been our approach in our discussion with the governor and other legislators in Oklahoma, that it's an opportunity to work together. What can we strengthen and how can we strengthen, on what we've done to help the schools, law enforcement, fire departments, roads and bridges. We have 5 health centers and 2 hospitals, in which we just purchased another one recently. And that's going to benefit all, not just Native people, but all. It's going to be open to the public. So everything we do, it's always been about Muscogee Creek Nation, but as well as our surrounding communities. How can we help?
Chief Hill, you mentioned just taking office as the pandemic was unfolding. What are some of the lessons you've learned from that whole experience?
Oh, goodness. Probably not being prepared, with the pandemic. First thing we had to do is create a task force with our health department. We met 3 to every day on what can we do to protect the citizens, the people, the employees. That was our main concern. During the pandemic, we lost a lot of ceremonial and traditional people at our ceremonial grounds, the churches. And what could we have done was my discussion with Sean Terry, our health director, or Secretary of Health, and it's always on your mind. There's a lot of nights we stayed up on the phone. What could we have done better to be prepared? You couldn't. There was just nothing you can do. Through our operation was our IT. How can we help to have everyone work from home? Are we equipped to do that? So there was a lot of planning involved, with the pandemic, and also it kind of reached broader out. We still have to service our citizens, so we had to keep our most essential workers at the complex. Our health department, our light horse division, and I myself came in until I got tested positive for COVID. I still work when I was at home, because that's on that. It's true, too much probably, but that's on your mind, because we as tribal leaders have a responsibility to take care of people and take care of the nation, and that's always been our approach: is what could we have done to make it better, to be more prepared. So there was a lot of, and to say mistakes, I guess to say more of a learning curve. What can we do the next time?
Well, speaking of that learning curve, you mentioned the new health centers going online across the country, and I know also the case for you. Vaccination rates are really remarkable in that people have stepped up and said yes in ways that other communities are not. Is there a message for the greater health system about how it worked in communities like yours?
Just having that communication with the surrounding communities. Our most important one was to the essential workers, health department, light horse, and everyone that had to come in, make sure they got their shots. Then we reached out to our elders. We definitely don't want to lose elders, in which we did. We lost approximately 200 people last year, citizens that a lot of history, cultural, the language, a lot of things that needs to be prevented.
Just as a citizen, I'm proud of the leadership's role in getting the vaccine out to eastern Oklahoma. I think because of the leadership of Creek Nation, who was at the tip of the spear, but all of the nations in Oklahoma. Oklahoma had one of the highest vaccination rates in its region. I think that can be directly attributed to the good work of our public health services and leadership of Principal Chief, Second Chief, our entire National Council. It was an all-hands-on-deck moment. And as a citizen, I think many of us appreciated it dearly.
Yes. Once we got all the essential workers, just kind of elaborating on what John said, we did reach out to, we had mobile units going to Tulsa, hosted events. I think the largest event was probably approximately 2,400. We did during the weekend. It was open to the public. So it was kind of a drive-through. And like John, he came, traveled all the way from D.C. to get his shots. So encourage everyone. That's one of the things we did, just encourage everyone to take their shots.
I'll ask you about the economics and coming out of the pandemic and how the CARES Act worked for you and kind of where we go from here.
As far as the CARES Act, that was a lot of collaboration on that as well with the team. We was able to build a safe space where we can have our employees still provide services to the citizens. Prevented everything was stationed 6 foot apart. Where the employees could come in, have the citizens come in and get the services. So we also built another storage facility that we housed all the PPE equipment. We built a meat processing plant that we definitely needed for that we can use our cattle to do the meat processing, which they're all USDA approved. Just what can we think ahead, how to prevent if it happens again? Are we prepared? So there's a lot of different ways that we've we're still thinking about other things in the future. We don't know what this other strain's going to do to us, but we just got to be prepared.
Well, let me ask about two things. One, Ambassador, I'll start with you, is every tribe has representation in Washington, and we grow up with government to government kind of knocked into our heads. But this is a real extension of that, where it's not just a representation of Washington, but an ambassador.
In order to be a true sovereign nation, you have to engage with other nations, other governmental bodies, in a diplomatic fashion. Historically, Creek Nation, like many nations, had emissaries and diplomats attend and go to Washington, attend meetings. One of our greatest ones was a relative and compatriot of Principal Chief Hill and our family as well, and that's Jito Harjo. And so over the course of history, like many nations, a lot of that diplomatic function that through a formal designee kind of fell off the map. So a return to that tradition is important practically because it helps us get the job done, but it's also very important historically and politically. It's a nod to our sovereign roots.
Just one last question. I want folks are wondering about the name change.
Well, it wasn't really a name change. That's what we had to clear up. It's more of a marketing. We never had a branding, and so when they said rebranding, we had to clarify that. The seal is constitutional, so we can't change it. So it's just a branding purpose. It's for marketing. So that's what that was.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, Chief, very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
And we'll be right back. ICT's managing editor, Jordan Bennett was at the White House this week, where the vice president met with tribal leaders about voting rights. There are a number of challenges tribes face in this coming election, with increased voting restrictions in a number of states. Welcome, Jordan.
Hi, Mark. Yate, thanks for having me.
So tell us about why this meeting is so important.
Sure. The vice president, Kamala Harris, met with a lot of community leaders who are working on voting rights initiatives, in their communities across Indian country. And the fact that she wanted to, sit down and have a discussion about their experiences and, all of them trying to protect the right to vote was really, paramount. And, just sitting and listening to these individuals on what's happening now, especially with a lot of, voting changes across the country. And a lot of times, in states where there are large Native populations too.
Did they get into the politics of this? The John Lewis Act, for example, requires Senate to change its filibuster rules. I'm wondering if that came up.
Yeah, it came up it came up a little bit in the vice president's remarks. The press poll media, which I was part of, was really only in the room for about 7 to 10 minutes at the most. So we were there for the vice president's remarks, which she did mention, the John Lewis that they were talking about. And then we're there for Interior Secretary Holland's remarks. and we got booted out. And so I wasn't there for the whole duration of the meeting, but in just hearing what, their priorities were for this discussion.
Well, the White House will probably say that preserves the privacy of the conversation so that people could give them honest advice.
Yeah, no, it definitely, definitely. I wish I could stay there for the whole duration of it, but it just wasn't, maybe next time, who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting that you've been to the White House quite a bit lately, and I'm curious about just the changing nature. You also covered an international event back in the Trump administration. How is it different?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel like for press in this Biden administration, it's a little bit easier to make those connections and to try to get into these White House events. During the Trump administration, it was a little bit tricky. But once we made the connection, we were able to get into these events. But with this administration, there's, I feel like, a sense of a better relationship, right? Or at least it's a little bit easier to get into these White House events. But the security is also still very high, especially with the insurrection that happened in January. Right, there's a lot of the fencing still around the White House, and there's just more planning involved in trying to get into these events because you never know what's going to happen or what delays or obstacles there will be.
The other difference that seems really paramount is just they put an importance on publications like Indian Country Today.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's what the great part about it is. I mean, Aaliyah Chavez, our reporter, was able to be asked a question in the White House press briefing to the press secretary, that was phenomenal. And I was so impressed and happy that, Indigenous media is now become part of the priority. There's just a sense of wanting them to build this relationship and work with Indian Country in that way.
What's coming up in Washington? We only have about 30 seconds left.
Sure. So this week we're keeping an eye on the Lummi totem pole that's going to be arriving in DC tomorrow as part of the Red Road to DC, and it's a call to the Biden administration in trying to fight for different land issues across Indian Country. So we'll be keeping an eye on that.
Thank you so much, Jordan.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark.
As the Tokyo Olympics enters its second week of competition, the World Eskimo Indian Olympics wrapped up in Fairbanks, Alaska. These games showcase traditional methods needed to live in a cold Alaska environment. Drea Yazzie shows us how they've turned skills like the ones used to hunt seals into games that most people who plank would envy.
The seal hop is a game of endurance and strength. In this push-up or planking position, the athlete has only knuckles and toes touching the floor. They hop forward as far as possible. This game mimics a seal's movement and is used by hunters trying to get closer to the seals. Kyle Worrell from Juneau, Alaska, hopped over 154 feet, blowing out his competition. He says the sport is based on the skills needed to hunt seals.
The story behind the game is that this was based on a hunting technique to sneak up to seals laying out on the ice floe. And so hunters realized if they simply tried to walk up to a seal, the seal's going to see them come and it's going to dive down back in the ocean, and they're going to lose that opportunity to have a seal to bring home to feed their community.
Welcome to the 60th Annual World Eskimo Indian Olympics, where athletes are excited to get back into competition after having a year off due to the pandemic. Samantha Mogg, like many athletes, participated in more than one event.
I do Eskimo stick pull, Indian stick pull, grease pole walk, and air pull.
Medals are bestowed upon those who show great strength, agility, and persistence. However, the competition is much more than that.
It's called the Olympics or competition, but really it's a celebration of our culture and our people. And so you go to the event and it's healing, and you're constantly running into friends and family, and the sportsmanship is is one of the most powerful aspects of the games. Is all the athletes are there supporting each other and holding each other up, no matter your experience levels.
Animal as possible into their lives because we are appreciative of what it can give to us.
Many Alaska Native families still rely on subsistence living. Kelly Lincoln from Bethel, Alaska, showed physical agility skinning a seal in under 2 minutes and 8 seconds. The ear weight is another popular game. The strength resembles endurance to frostbite. This year's winner was Frank Lane from Kotzebue, Alaska, who made it 503 feet. This premier event originated as a form of communication. When whales or other game were hunted, a messenger ran back within sight of the village and would jump and kick on one or both feet in the air to communicate they were on their way back. In Phoenix, Drea Yazzie, Indian Country Today.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. Thank you for watching. For all the latest news, go to IndianCountryToday.com. I'm Mark Trahan.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
This is Indian Country Today.